You're Freddy Krueger, and long ago you killed children by picking them off one by one until the town had a name for you. The Springwood Slasher. You worked the boiler rooms where you murdered these children until you were caught. The police had you in their custody. However, when it was time to persecute you, the legal system fumbled. Evidence, forms, and a bungled warrant meant you were set free on a technicality. The law let you walk, but the parents who have lost their children did not accept that. They decided to take justice into their own hands. They hunted you down to the boiler room where you were staying and set the building on fire. They burned you alive amid the machines and ash. It was graphic as your skin roasted, but it was also justice. That should have been the end. But you weren't finished. Your soul clung to the hate, to the fear, to the sheer ugliness you had nurtured all your life. You came back as something completely twisted. Your skin was no longer skin. It looked melted, clinging to bone and muscle like candle wax dripping over stone. Every inch of your face was scar tissue, stretched tight, puckered and raw, with deep grooves where fire had eaten straight through. Your lips were ragged, peeling back to show teeth even when you weren't smiling. With your new makeover, you found a new hunting ground, dreams. Sleep became your trap, nightmares your cage, and children once again your prey. It sounds powerful. Immortality, invincibility, and a killing ground with no rules. But here's the truth. Your powers are a curse. You're strong only when people are asleep. The moment they force their eyes open, you're gone. Your terror collapses under a cup of coffee, a bottle of no-dos, or a kid watching TV until dawn. You can stalk, taunt, stretch your arms to impossible lengths, but the second someone wakes up, you're nothing. You're not Jason Voorhees, who can walk into any room with a machete. You're not Michael, who can stalk through neighborhoods in silence. You're an alarm clock away from being erased. You're a dream killer in an age of sleep disorders and caffeine addiction. Your kills are elaborate, creative, and completely pointless because your victims just die in the real world anyway. You spend enormous amounts of energy creating complex dream scenarios to murder people in imaginative ways. However, the end result is the same as if you'd just given them a heart attack. And worse, you're stuck. You can't roam the world. You can't expand your reach. You're chained to Elm Street, forever tied to the kids of one suburban block. Jason can visit Manhattan. Chucky can hide in any child's toy box. But you? You're the supernatural HOA president of a single zip code. Even in dreams, you're on a leash. But it gets worse. Your body doesn't recover. Those burns never heal. And every moment of your existence is pain. A pain that stays with you when you walk, laugh, and talk. Immortality for you is actually just endless torture, which means that you're both the torturer and the tortured. Your burned appearance is also a problem because it makes you instantly recognizable, which eliminates any element of surprise or stealth from your attacks. You can't blend in, can't disguise yourself, and can't approach victims without immediately revealing your identity. You're the least subtle killer in horror, announcing your presence just by existing. And then there's your weapon. The infamous claws. 4 blades strapped to a workman's glove designed to rake and tear. At first, it terrifies. A slasher's perfect signature. But it's also ridiculous. Try opening a door with that thing or try scratching your head. The glove makes you iconic, yes, but it also makes you clumsy. Half your menace is ruined the moment someone realizes you can't eat spaghetti without shredding your dinner plate. But maybe the craziest thing isn't your glove. It is probably your mouth. In the beginning, silence made you terrifying. You lurked in the corners of bedrooms. You struck without warning. Then you started talking, laughing, and with that, the one-liners came. Every kill punctuated by a pun, every scream drowned out by a punchline. At first, it set you apart from the silent killers. But it didn't take long before you weren't scary anymore. You were funny. You became the host of your own horror comedy, roasting your victims before roasting them alive. By the late sequels, the audience wasn't hiding behind pillows. They were waiting for your next joke. But it gets worse. Your existence depends entirely on people's fear and knowledge of you, which means you're constantly at risk of being forgotten and fading into irrelevance. You're famous, yes, but fame is fickle. If people stop talking about you, stop making movies about you, or stop being afraid of you, you cease to exist, making you the most insecure supernatural entity in horror history. But as if that wasn't enough, your backstory as a child molester makes you irredeemably evil, which means you can never be sympathetic and never be anything other than a monster that audiences want to see defeated. You're not a tragic villain or a misunderstood anti-hero. You're just a pedophile with supernatural powers, which is the worst possible combination. Your franchise has been rebooted, remade, and reimagined so many times that your original identity has been diluted into a generic slasher villain. You went from being a unique, terrifying concept to being just another masked killer in a saturated horror market. Your cultural impact has been diminished by your own commercial success. Your dream powers are inconsistent and poorly defined, which means you're sometimes omnipotent and sometimes vulnerable, depending on what the plot requires. You can reshape reality in dreams, but you can also be defeated by teenagers who figure out the right trick or have enough willpower. Your abilities are as reliable as the writing in your movies. But here's what's truly wild. Your reputation has been commercialized into toys, costumes, and merchandise that turn you from a terrifying nightmare into a marketable brand. You can buy Freddy Krueger action figures, Halloween costumes, and novelty items that transform your image from horror icon into consumer product. Your terror has been monetized and sanitized. You are proof that being powerful doesn't mean being happy, that immortality isn't always a gift, and that revenge can become its own prison. You're trapped in an existence defined entirely by hatred, violence, and the need to inflict suffering, which makes you as much a victim of your own evil as your victims are. Your legacy is being a cautionary tale about what happens when communities take justice into their own hands and when evil is so profound it transcends death itself. You're a supernatural consequence of human failure to properly address evil through legitimate means. You're Freddy Krueger, and it sucks. If you've made it this far without falling asleep and becoming vulnerable to dream attacks, congratulations, you have better insomnia than most Elm Street residents. Speaking of nightmares, hit subscribe because unlike Freddy's kills, this channel's content won't haunt your dreams.